Hello everybody and welcome to the 12th lecture of MIA 320. In this lecture we are going to continue talking about managing the impact of engineering, and we are going to talk about Occupational Health and Safety Act. Before starting to talk about Occupational Health and Safety Act 85 of 1993 of South Africa, I would like to mention that it's not a subject that can be covered properly in 40 minutes time that we have, but we try our best to cover as much as we can in a short period of time. But I just want you to not have this kind of like impression that Health and Safety Act, especially when you are doing engineering work, is so simple that it can be covered in the 40 minutes. So think about the importance of it as a subject that people do it for their life. So they are professional, they study about it, and they work on specifically occupational health and safety. Okay, so the Act 85 of 1993 that we are going to talk about today, I provided the link here. Please go download the file and go through it. We are going to provide some information as well, but it's always great to go through the files, because you are going to work in this country. You need to know about the act, and you also, if you want to register as a professional engineer, you need to make sure that you understand this concept, and not about the act, but at the same time the importance of it in engineering work. So in this lecture we are going to talk about the scope of Act 85 of 1993. We are going to discuss about legal accountability and responsibility of the employer as well as employees in the workplace, because there are some responsibilities and accountability from a legal perspective for employee, some for employer. We are going to talk about them. If we want to just like summary of the act in a very short, in one slide and a very short, we can say that it's like the act provides a base for the health and safety of people at workplace. This act also tries to protect people other than employees from the hazards of the workplace. This act also establishes an advisory council for occupational health and safety. Okay. The Act 85 of 1993 mainly focuses on two areas of occupational diseases and occupational injuries. So basically, if we want to describe the differences, injuries, you know, that is like an accident, happens while you are doing your job, but diseases are the things that comes maybe a little bit later as a consequences of being exposed to a chemical material, or like a bad positioning during the time that employees are doing their job. So injuries are immediate, happens due to the like accident, but diseases comes in a long run, and it's due to exposing to something or conditioned for a long period of time. In this like a lecture, we are going to talk a little bit about the management main responsibility from the financial perspective, from legal perspective, and from moral perspective. The Act has 50 sections and more than 1,000 regulation and sub-regulations. So as I told you, it's not a very simple topic that can be covered in a short period of time. There are some people that they work on this subject for 30 years, for 25 years to generate those kind of regulations, to check the proper implementation of them. And sometimes those kind of like regulations, you might think that they are unnecessary or there are like too much of paperwork. Please stop thinking like that. This act is really important. Why? Because when we are speaking about occupational injuries or diseases, we are talking about employees' life. Okay? So they are very important, even though, yes, there are like lots of paperwork, you know, lots of regulations, but we need to understand that it's necessary. Okay? So the regulations that, because we said that this, if you, just like in a previous lecture, we mentioned that it's more than 1,000 regulations and sub-regulations, but what are those regulations? Some of the examples is like general admin regulation, general safety regulation, electrical installation regulation, environmental regulation, chemical hazard material or general machinery regulation, pressure equipment, and many other different regulations. Because when we are talking about more than 1,000 regulations, so you can understand that we can talk about them for days, because for every single thing you need to have a written regulation in a way that people can follow those regulations. Before going into the Act and talking about the different sections of the Act, there are some kind of like definitions that we need to know, because it will help us a lot to understand the Act better. Reasonably practicable. So means that like as you can see here, when we are speaking about reasonably practicable, it means that we are focusing on 4 different areas, regards to 4 different areas. With regard to severity and scope, that means that what is reasonably practical to keep a workshop at home safe, it's different from what is reasonably practicable to keep a SCOM subsection safe. Okay, so when we are speaking about like a home workshop, or when we are speaking about a SCOM subsection or power plant, we are talking about completely two different things. So the severity and the scope of those hazard and risk that employees or people that they are working in that area can be exposed to are completely different. Okay, those severity, the problem, the machinery or a specific problem that they are going to be faced with. The other way is the state of knowledge. You must get information regarding the place that you are working, as well as the risk associated with it. So always you need to be informed to be able to make informed decisions. Okay, so if I don't talk about, for example, the chemicals that we are going to use, or the chemicals that are stored in the workshop, so you are not informed about the material that you are exposed to, or the material that you are working with. Okay, so when you are informed, after that you are understanding the risk. So that's the section B. And for the availability and suitability, basically means that do we have access to it, how suitable or appropriate is it for or specific circumstances, if the risk from hazard outweighs the cost of reducing the risk, action must be taken. If costs substantially outweigh risk, take less costly action or no action if there are no alternatives. For example, let's say spending just 5,000 rand to prevent the occasional finger scratches would not be reasonable, but spending 50,000 on a machine guard to stop an arm to be cut would be reasonable. So those kind of thinking in terms of like a cost and benefit is another point that needs to be taken into consideration. Biological monitoring means that we are still on like the definition, because first we just like in this slide we were talking about reasonably practicable and different aspect or point of it. Biological monitoring means that the planned program of periodic collection and analysis of body fluid, tissues and different things. So you can just like read the definition that I mentioned there. We are not going to spend lots of time on it because there are many slides that we need to cover. Medical surveillance would be based on hazard identification and risk assessment. Premises includes any building, vehicle, vessel, train or aircraft. Workplace means any premises or places where a person performs work in the course of his or her employment. Hazard means a source of exposure to danger. Risk means the probability that injury or damage will occur. So now that we know a little bit about those definitions and words, let's dive into the Act and just like cover some of the sections. So we are going to first speak about Section 8.1 and 8.2 of Act 85 of 1993. These two, basically Section 8 or the subsection 1 and 2, focuses on the general duties of employers. Basically, here, as you see that we mentioned that employers and employees, they have two different responsibilities from a legal perspective. So here we are focused on employers. So basically, after starting at like a work, you might be employee and you might be employer. So you can go and work for like a big company. In that case, you are a field engineer, so you will be employee of a big company. But at the same time, you need to understand the duties of employer as well. Why? Because you need to know the workplace that you are going to work and what you need to expect from your employer. At the same time, if you want to start your small company, you need to understand your responsibilities, especially legal responsibilities regarding the people that you hire as well. So you see, those are very important. So you can't say that, oh, I'm not going to be employer, why I need to know. No, when you are working for somebody and you are an employee, you need to know that what's the responsibility of your employer towards you. So based on the act, employer needs to provide and maintain a working environment that is safe and without risk to the health and safety of employee. Okay, so there are in section 2, without derogating from the generality of an employer's duty under subsection 1, the matters to which those duties refer include in particular. So it's like explaining, basically. Just like don't get into because the wording, it's a kind of like a legal documentation. So the wording, sometimes like they use a mouthful in words, so don't get confused. It's just like a very it's the way that they worded from a legal perspective, but we think about the understanding of the concept behind those words. So in 2, those duties refer including 2 particular A and B, which A is taking such steps that are reasonably practicable. We mentioned about it, to eliminate or mitigate any hazard or potential hazard to the safety and health of employees before resorting to personal protective equipment. B, making arrangement for ensuring, as far as is reasonably practicable, the safety and absence of risk to health in connection with the production, processing, use, handling, storage, or transport of articles or substances. For example, let's say somebody is like I don't know, having a logistic company. Okay, so you hire people, you have truck, you hire drivers, they just like drive the car. Basically, it's when we are saying that reasonably practice it to eliminate and mitigate any hazard. You can't, like as an employer, say that, okay, driving is 100% safe. No, it can't be, because accident can happen. But you, as an employer, need to show that you took steps to eliminate or mitigate those like risks or hazards in a reasonable way. Okay. Engineering revision as a mitigating factor instead of PPE. Okay, what is what we are talking about here? For example, sometimes if I want to give a very small example to make it easier for you to understand, is that PPE you provided to your employees. For example, if they are going to do a welding, they need to have a proper shell to cover their eyes, or proper glove to protect their hands. Those are the things that you need to do. But before that, you need to think about, is there any steps that from the engineering perspective that I can do it before even thinking about PPE or relying on PPE? So for example, the amount of time exposed to the hazard and the distance at which you are exposed, and the shielding present while you are exposed? So it's not just about PPE. For example, I said that okay, I just like provided my employee with a PPE, so it doesn't matter if he's exposed to the chemicals or for like 20 hours per week, for example. Or I provided him with like a shield, so it doesn't matter if he is exposed to the high temperature for that period of time. So engineering revision needs to be considered as a mitigating factor, not just relying on PPE. For example, I can say that in this case, for example, I can't remove this fixed guard and say that okay, I'm just like providing my employee with a guard for his hand, and if the hand goes inside is okay. Why? Because I provided him with a personal protection equipment. No, if there is a kind of like engineering revision that I can mitigate the risk, I need to do it. Okay. So here, for example, simply you just like put a fixed guard, so you are removing one of those risks that your employees might be exposed to when they are working in the workshop. Here you see interlock guards. Those are for some CNC machines. You see that sometimes there are no guards, and you know that so I can't say that okay, I'm not going to support my employees with a guard, but at the same time I'm going to give them like something to protect their eyes. When I can with some kind of engineering revision mitigate the risk, I need to do it. There are some examples or interlocking guard or like a point of operation guard. You see that, for example, here is hand. I can't just like provide some kind of glove for I'm talking about the right hand side picture. I need to design the machine or protect the machine in some way with a guard. In this case, you see that it's not the case. For a section, let me just like show that here we talked about section A and B, but if we continue here, section A2, in the section C, the provision and maintenance of system of work, plant or machinery that as far as is reasonably practicable are safe and without risk to health. So we talked about it. D is just like, let me go back because it might be all we are talking about this one. Provide and maintain a working environment that is safe and without risk to the health and safety of employees. Those duties refers to this particular A, B, C, and we are just like talking about them. Okay. So for these, like establish as far as is reasonably practicable that we talked about, and what does it mean with hazards to the health or safety of a person that is attached to any work which is performed or any substance which is produced. Okay. E, subsection E, providing such information, instruction, training and supervision as might be necessary to ensure as far as is reasonably practical the health and safety at work of his employees. It's the responsibility of employer. Another one is as far as is reasonably practicable, not permitting any employee to do any work to produce, process, use, handle, store or transport any article or substance, or to operate any plant or machinery unless the precautionary measures are taken. For example, Sometimes you cannot, you might, let's say, you want to do a project, and at the same time you don't have the right tool to do it, and you are asking your employee, no, it's fine, don't worry about it, just like try to do it, while you know that it's not by doing that, or by forcing or telling your employee to do it, he cannot perform it in a safe environment. So again, you need to avoid that one. Another subsection is taking all the necessary measures to ensure that the requirements of this act are complied with by every person in his employment. So what does it mean? It's like you talk about the act and health to your employees, but at the same time you are not enforcing it properly, so you are not following it if they are really trying to do the safety, or stick to all those safety acts or regulations that you explain to your employees. So it's your responsibility to make sure. For example, is like machinery, make sure, or you need to put some kind of, I don't know, like a paper in front of machine. Are you sure that you are wearing this one? Are you sure that you are, before starting the machine, make sure that like a health and safety considerations are taken into consideration. Enforcing such measures as may be necessary in the interest of health and safety. Also ensuring that work is performed at the plant or machinery is used under the general supervision of a person trained to understand the hazards associated with it, and who have the authority to ensure that precautionary measures taken by the employer are implemented. So that's the reason the majority of the companies, they have expert on those fields to make sure that everything is in order and everybody is following the regulations. And the J section, causing all employees to be informed regarding the scope of their authority as contemplated in section 71(1)(b). Okay, so but now you might say that, okay, what is this section 37(1)(b)? Basically, this section states that employees do anything that they are not allowed to do. It is in their own problems. Thus, our employees must be informed of their duties and responsibilities. Okay, section 10 talks about the general duties of manufacturers and others regarding articles and substances for use at work. So there are, this sections, they have like many subsections. I'm just like put some of them here to talk about, or read from them in a way that make you familiar with those acts. Otherwise, as I mentioned at the beginning, is not enough time for us to go through all the sections and aspects of Act 85 of 1993. But you have access to the file and you can go through it yourself. Any person who installs any article for use at work or in any premises shall ensure, as far as is reasonably practiced, that nothing about the manner in which it is erected or installed makes it unsafe or creates a risk to health and safety when properly used. So basically you see that it's like simply what it's trying to say, that if somebody is like installing anything inside the workplace, needs to be make sure that using that installed equipment or whatever can be done in a safe manner. Okay, so I said that those kind of like documents, the acts, are legal documentation, so the wording might be a little bit complicated, but it's all we need to understand is the concept or meaning of it, not exactly like remembering every single word. Section 13 of the Act focuses on duty to inform. So as an employer, you need to give information to every employee regarding their the hazard to his health and safety or her health and safety attached to any work. For example, I need to inform them about that you know what, do you understand that if you want to work in my factory for 20 years and do welding for like I don't know, 5 days per week for the rest of your life, what are the risks to your life? Or if you work in this plant and you are exposed to these materials, do you understand about the risk associated to it? So always you need to inform, and it's not something that it's nice to do. You have a duty to inform, and after that is like based on their decision. They might maybe if somebody comes to me and say that, you know what, those are like, you are going to be exposed to those kind of chemicals, and after that if I'm not convinced that the workplace is safe, I don't take the offer. Okay, so it's your duty to inform your employees regarding that, because it's like, let's say for example the incident happens, okay, and after that I as a employee I said that I go to the court and say that, okay, my employer didn't say anything about me, about the risks that I'm exposed to. For example, he didn't tell me about that the speed of this machinery can go to 10,000 for example RPM, or like a vibration related to that if I put something on the table and when the machine is working it might move a little bit, and after that you know, that comes on my leg and things like that. So how you as an employer you can convince the court that no, I really talked about those risks, and he means or she, my employee was completely informed. So how you want to prove it? So that's, you need to think. So that's a reason the majority of the times, even if I'm not mistaken, when I came to university, I passed the course on Health and Safety Act, and the university gave us kind of like a certification. So what does it mean? It means that if something happens after that, university can say that, you know what, no, I talked about it with Dr. Merabi, and he went to that course, he participated in that course, and after that, after successfully completing all those courses, he received the certification. So I informed him. That's a proof. Okay. Section 14 of the Act basically talks about the general duties of employees it said that okay, employers, they have duties. How about the employees? So employees, they have some duties as well. So employees need to take reasonable care of the health and safety of themselves. Okay, so it's not just they shouldn't think that okay, all the safety is just related to employer and I shouldn't do anything. No, you are responsible for your health and safety as well. Not just yourself, but your colleagues or anybody who is working with you and might be affected by your actions. Besides that, employees need to carry out any lawful order given to him. For example, you work in a like a shop, workshop, I mean, and like for a company, and your supervisor says that you need to move this chemical to the storage. You need to store it safely, and I don't do it. So legally I will be responsible if something happens, not just to myself, to my colleagues as well. Why? Because I was instructed to do it, but I did not follow the health and safety rules. And if any situation which is unsafe or unhealthy comes to my attention, I need to report it. Because sometimes, okay, I see that, oh no, it's my shift is finishing, I don't care, I'm just going home. No, I have a duty to report it to my supervisor. Why? Because my colleague might be affected. If we continue with that general duties of employees, section E, you see that if I'm involved in any kind of like accident that may affect my health or causes injury, I need to report it to my employer. Why? Because they might can prevent it. For example, if like a small things happens, for example, I'm working with a machine and some small things happens, it's very small, nothing big, so I didn't injured me badly. But if I report it to my employer, they might think that okay, now it's reasonable to install some kind of guard to prevent same thing happens to another colleague that is going to come and work on the same machine after me. Okay. Section 16 of the Act talks a little bit about the management and their responsibilities or legal accountability. Here you see that, for example, section 16.1 and 16.2, the CEO is accountable for duties of the employer under the Act. He or she may assign any duty to another person under his control in terms of section 16.2, but the Act is clear on the issue that the CEO must direct and control the assignee. Therefore, he can assign duties but not accountable. For example, it's like somebody is the head of the company. He's going to hire CTO, like a chief technology officer. After that section, like a chief engineer, principal engineer, like a safety manager of the plant. So basically, in the structure, everything goes back to CEO, but because he assigned somebody to make sure that all those acts are in place, he or she won't be accountable, but of course responsible to make sure that there is somebody to check all those duties. So it's like a legal pointies. This slide shows the Occupational Health and Safety Act management structure, how it should be done. Unfortunately, it's like already the time is, but I'm going to just like talk a little bit more because we passed the 40 minutes, but it's I'm just like going to continue a little bit, and after that the rest of the slides will be for self-study. Deviations is like section 18 and 20 of the Act. So the HOD, head of department or director, must take note and if necessary comment or take some steps regarding any deviations mentioned in the health and safety presentation inspection book. For example, there is like an inspection book. There are some steps to needs to be taken to prevent some risks or prevent some kind of like a hazard. So those kind of needs to be done. Not in terms of just like doing or compiling a kind of like an inspection book. The head of department or director also must sign the inspection report to certify that notification took place. So first you need to notify, and at the same time you need to show that the notification was done properly. Safety documentation is like, we call it like necessary evil, so it means that it needs to be there, but of course it's very time consuming. It tends to slow down the work activities because you need to check everything to make sure that everything is fine, but it's necessary. Sometimes in a small projects, engineers might think that it's like totally unnecessary, but it's completely wrong. It is necessary, it is very important, but of course it's time consuming. You might say that, okay, what can go wrong in terms of like what is going to happen? So I don't know if you have heard about the Challenger. It was like a NASA shuttle, and 2 months ago or even more, I watched a documentary on Netflix about it. The documentary was about the Challenger. The name of the documentary, if I'm not mistaken, was Challenger, the final flight. So it was more or less was about a very small engineering failure that like caused life of people that they were on Challenger. But you see that you might think that, okay, when you are working for such a like a NASA or those kind of like a space programs, those kind of like a mistakes cannot happen, but that's not true. So it's just like because of malfunctioning of just one part, life of, if I'm not mistaken, 7 people were lost. And of course, like all the money that they invested during the last I don't know, during the 2 or 3 years before sending it to Challenger, went into the brain as well. But as we said that there is when we are talking about the space shuttle program, it's different from a workshop. So in terms of NASA's safety policy, all shuttle projects during that time must have a safety reliability of 99.9%. Budget was not a case for them, so they were 3,000 quality assurances specialists and 15,000 contractors and subcontractors. In case of a Challenger had 5.6 million parts plus 1.5 million systems or subsystems or assemblies. So just think about that parts are fine, but when you are assembling it to create a system, might something goes wrong. So just think about the amount of work in terms of documentation of safety needs to be done. Yes, of course it's time consuming, but it is necessary. Why? Because by having 3,000 qualified assurance specialists, you still get those kind of accidents. So basically it was some of the engineers, they were saying that you should not send Challenger when the temperature, when you are launching it, the temperature is lower than 20 centigrade, but the day that they did it, it was a political pressure. They wanted to do it as fast as possible, so they were not thinking that it's as important as some engineers suggested, so they sent it, and that incident happened. Okay, so there are some other slides that I'm just lacking. I'm not going to cover that, but please read it as a self-study. I'm going to just write it on top as a self-study. And here I'm just want to let's say, I think the rest of the slides I can just put it as a self-study. Please go through it and read. But again, I would like to mention that health and safety is an important topic, especially for us engineers, that we are exposed to those kind of risks and hazardous materials when we are working for big companies as engineers, or if we want to start a small engineering company and we are employers. So we need to understand those acts. The Act 85 of 1993, we just provided you with very brief information about the act, because there is not enough time in 45 minutes to go through it. The slides are here. The file, I provided you with the link to the file, so please go and check the file to see what the act is talking, because we could not cover all the sections. There are some other information that I summarized and took out from that act, but it's for self-study because we couldn't cover everything in 40 minutes time. That's it for today. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye bye.